proposal, and their number is legion, to displace us from cosmic center stage has also been resisted, in part for similar reasons. We seem to crave privilege, merited not by our works, but by our birth. By the mere fact that, say, we're humans and born on Earth. We might call it the anthropocentric, the human-centered conceit. This conceit is brought close to culmination in the notion that we are created in God's image. The creator and ruler of the entire universe looks just like me. My, what a coincidence. How convenient and satisfying. The 6th century BC Greek philosopher Xenophanes understood the arrogance of this perspective. Here's what he said. The Ethiopians make their gods black and snub-nosed. The Thracians say theirs have blue eyes and red hair. Yes, and if oxen and horses or lions had hands and could paint with their hands and produce works of art as men do, horses would paint the forms of the gods like horses, and oxen like oxen. And again, if we're not important, not central, not the apple of God's eye, what is implied for our theologically based moral codes? The discovery of our true bearings in the cosmos was resisted for so long, to such a degree, that many traces of the debate remain, sometimes with the motives of the geocentrists laid bare. So, what do we really want from philosophy and religion? Palliatives? Therapy? Comfort? Do we want reassuring fables, or an understanding of our actual circumstances? Dismay that the universe does not conform to our preferences seems childish. You might think that grown-ups would be ashamed to put such disappointments into print. The fashionable way of doing this is not to blame the universe, which seems truly pointless, but rather to blame the means by which we know the universe, namely, science. Science has taught us that because we have a talent for deceiving ourselves, subjectivity may not freely reign. Its conclusions derive from the interrogation of nature, and are not in all cases pre-designed to satisfy our wants. We recognize that even revered religious leaders, the products of their time, as we are of ours, may have made mistakes. Religions contradict one another on small matters such as whether we should put on a hat or take one off on entering a house of worship, or whether we should eat beef and eschew pork or the other way around, all the way to the most central issues such as whether there are no gods, one God, or many gods.
The word God covers an enormous range of different ideas, and you recognize that in the way you phrase the question. Running from an outsized, light-skinned male with a long white beard sitting in a throne in the sky and tallying the fall of every sparrow, for which there is no evidence. To my mind, if anybody has some, I sure would like to see it. To the kind of God that Einstein or Spinoza talked about, which is very close to the sum total of the laws of the universe. Now, it'd be crazy to deny that there are laws in the universe. And if that's what you want to call God, then of course God exists. And there are all sorts of other nuances. There is, for example, the deist God that many of the founding fathers of this country believed in, although it is a secret whose name may not be spoken in some circles, a roi fainéant, a do-nothing king, the God who creates the universe and then retires, and to whom praying to is sort of pointless. He's not here. He went somewhere else. He had other things to do. Now, that's also a God. So when you say, do you believe in God? If I say yes or if I say no, you have learned absolutely nothing.
I guess I'm asking you to define yours if you have one.
But why would we use a word so ambiguous that means so many different things?
It gives you freedom to define it.
It gives you freedom to seem to agree with someone else with whom you do not agree. It covers over differences. It makes for social lubrication, but it is not an aid to truth, in my view. And therefore, I think we need much sharper language when we ask these questions. Sorry to take so long in answering this, but this is an important issue.
What is your personal religion, or is there any type of God to you? Like, is there a purpose, given that we're just sitting on this speck in the middle of this sea of stars? Humans have created a mythological framework that has often involved some kind of higher spiritual powers. And as
Every human culture is different.
as that goes away, as we know more and more that, and it seems harder and harder to prove that anything might exist like that, where does that leave us?
On our own, which to my mind is much more responsible than hoping that someone will save us from ourselves so we don't have to make our best efforts to do it ourselves. And if we're wrong, And there is someone who steps in and says, okay, that's all right. I'm for that. But we, hedged our bets. It's Pascal's bargain run backwards.
Listen to this. I hate to read too much, but this is it's almost like they've been reading your book. This is from the New York Times for Friday, May 24. Americans flunk science, a study finds. Less than half of all American adults understand that the Earth orbits the sun yearly, according to a basic science survey. Nevertheless, there's enthusiasm for research accepted in some fields like genetic engineering and nuclear power that are viewed with suspicion. Only about 25% of American adults get passing grades in a National Science Foundation survey of what people know about basic science and economics. I mean, this is singing your song, isn't it?
Well, it's certainly what I'm talking about in the demon-haunted world. My feeling, Charlie, is that it's not that pseudoscience and superstition and New Age so-called beliefs and fundamentalist zealotry are something new. They've been with us for as long as we've been human. But we live in an age based on science and technology with formidable technological powers.
Science and technology are propelling us forward at accelerating rates.
That's right. And if we don't understand it, by we, I mean the general public, if it's something that, oh, I'm not good at that, I don't know anything about it, then who is making all the decisions about science and technology that are going to determine what kind of future our children live in? Just some members of Congress? But there's no more than a handful of members of Congress with any background in science at all. And the Republican Congress has just abolished its own Office of Technology Assessment, the organization that gave them bipartisan competent advice on science and technology. They say, we don't want to know. Don't tell us about science.
I mean, you blast them all. Creationists, Christian scientists who you say would rather allow their children to suffer than give them insulin or antibiotics. Astrologers come in for particular scorn on your part.
Well, I would say scorn, just derision.
A more generous version of scorn. But what's the danger of all this? I mean, this is not the thing that...
There's two kinds of dangers. One is what I just talked about, that we've arranged a society based on science and technology, in which nobody understands anything about science and technology. I mean, who is running the science and technology in a democracy if the people don't know anything about it? And the second reason that I'm worried about this is that science is more than a body of knowledge. It's a way of thinking, a way of skeptically interrogating the universe with a fine understanding of human fallibility. If we are not able to ask skeptical questions, to interrogate those who tell us that something is true, to be skeptical of those in authority, then we're up for grabs for the next charlatan, political or religious, who comes ambling along. It's a thing that Jefferson laid great stress on. It wasn't enough, he said, to enshrine some rights in the Constitution or a Bill of Rights. The people had to be educated, and they had to practice their skepticism and their education. Otherwise, we don't run the government. The government runs us.
A lot of this has to do with science in the United States. Are we different than other nations?
Absolutely not. You can see this worldwide. In India, there's a madness about astrology. In Britain, it's ghosts. In Germany, it's rays coming up from the earth that can only be detected by dowsers. Every country has its own specialties. We seem to be fascinated by UFOs right now. But
what is that? Before we leave UFOs, tell me about you and Professor Mack. You were making a point before I jumped to John Mack.
What I wanted to say is, going back to the question of adequate evidence on something that's emotionally really pulling you. I lost both my parents about 12, 15 years ago, and I had a great relationship with them. I really miss them. I would love to believe that their spirits were around somewhere, and I'd give almost anything to spend 5 minutes a year with them.
Do you hear their voices ever?
Sometimes. About 6 or 8 times since their death, I've heard Carl, just in the voice of my father or my mother. And I don't think that means that they're in the next room. I think it means that I've had an auditory hallucination. I was with them so long, I've heard their voices so often. Why shouldn't I be able to make a vivid recollection?
Here's what's interesting about this for me. I mean, you won't see this, but I'll throw it at you anyway. You convinced me a long time ago that it was arrogant for me or for anyone else to believe that there wasn't some life outside of our...
To exclude the possibility.
To exclude the possibility was an arrogance of intellect that we should not.
I still do.
You couldn't prove it. You didn't know it was there, but the arrogance...
Right. We don't know if it's there. We don't know if it's not there. Let's look.
And if you take that, why can't you say there's a lot we don't know?
I say
a power there that we
there's
don't
a
know.
lot we don't know. You know, that's what I believe.
About
But that doesn't mean that every fraudulent claim has to be accepted. We demand the most rigorous standards of evidence, especially on what's important to us. So if some guy comes up to me, a channeler or a medium, and says, I can put you in touch with your parents. Well, because I want so terribly to believe that, I know I have to reach in for added reserves of skepticism because I'm likely to be fooled and much more minor to have my money taken.
Some reviewers differ with your conclusions on this point, that you seem to say it's grooming, this kind of pseudoscience.
I don't. This is part of being human. Humans have had this way of magical thinking through all of our history. The problem is that today the technology has reached formidable, maybe even awesome proportions. And so the dangers of thinking this way are larger. Not that this is a new kind of thing.
You are living with myelodysplasia.
For I have been.
It's in remission. Are you well? And just share with us, because of your sense of language and your sense of understanding and being reflective and perspective, what do you think about it? What does it do for you too?
I didn't have any near-death experiences. I didn't have any near-death experiences.
I
didn't have a religious conversion, but I
thought about what it would be like to die.
Certainly, and what it would be like for my family, and I didn't much think about what it would be like for me because I don't think it's likely there's anything that you think about after you're dead.
That's it.
Yeah, long dreamless sleep. I'd love to believe the opposite, but I don't have any evidence. But one thing,
Faith, Carl, faith.
One thing that it has done is to enhance my sense of appreciation for the beauty of life and of the universe and the sheer joy of being alive. One point I'd like to make about this is that every human culture has a set of creation myths, but they're in the realm of mythology or religion or folklore, and they are, of course, all mutually inconsistent. The great thing that is happening in our time is that we are able, through a method which can actually make some progress towards the real universe out there, to find out something about origins, and this is the scientific method applied to the science of cosmology.
And Carl Sagan, in your introduction to the book, you commented on this. You said this is also a book about God, or perhaps about the absence of God, because Hawking left nothing for a creator to do. Now, God, of course, means many things to many people. What sort of God, basically, are we talking about when we talk about reading the mind of God?
I think that's an excellent question, and I'd be most interested to hear Stephen Hawking's answer. But just to try to illuminate the range of possibilities, consider two alternatives. One is the notion popular in the West of God as a sort of outsized, elderly white male with a long white beard sitting in a throne in the sky and tallying the fall of every sparrow. Contrast that with the idea of God in the mind of, let's say, Spinoza or Einstein, which was, at least very closely, the sum total of the laws of the universe. Now, it would be madness to deny that there are well-defined physical laws in the universe. And if that's what you mean by God, then there's no question that God exists, but it's a very remote God, what the French call la fainéante, a do-nothing king. On the other hand, the former model, the one who intervenes daily, for that there seems to be, as Dr. Hawking said, no evidence. I think it is wise, my own personal feeling, to be a little humble on such matters. We must recognize that we are dealing with, by definition, the most difficult things to know, the furthest from human experience, and perhaps we will be able to penetrate a little way into these mysteries.
Do you think that the Church is, in fact, beginning to recognize that it may have to lose its priority, its eminence, as the sole arbiter of these matters, and that science will be allowed to come in as an equal partner?
Well, the Church is certainly, when I say the Church, the Roman Catholic Church has become very much more liberal. I had the pleasure of giving a talk in the Vatican myself in the Pontifical Academy of Science quite recently and met the Pope. And of course, they're reinstating Galileo, and so things are moving.
But are they moving backwards as well as forward, Carl Sagan? Because I understand that in the earliest days of civilization, then the priests were in fact what we call the scientists, the ones who could study astronomy and who could predict eclipses and things. Do you see the scientists coming back into an almost sacerdotal position like this, or am I overstating it?
I hope you're overstating it. I think the essence of the scientific method is the willingness to admit you're wrong, the willingness to abandon ideas that don't work, and the essence of religion is not to change anything. The supposed truths are handed down by some revered figure, and then no one is supposed to make any progress beyond that because all the truth is thought to be in hand.
I'm really talking about setting an agenda for the future.
My sense is that the scientific way of thinking, questioning, some delicate mix of creative encouragement of new ideas and the most rigorous and skeptical scrutiny of new and old ideas, I think that is the path to the future, not just for science, but for all human institutions. We have to be willing to challenge because we are in desperate need of change.
But you said science should be skeptical of politics. Don't you think we ought to be a little skeptical about science too? I mean, can we trust you guys?
I think you should certainly be skeptical, but my view is that there's no community of people on the planet more skeptical than science. It's our stock in trade. It's the lifeblood of our subject.
Science is a self-correcting subject, not like politics.
There isn't what seems to be designed. Every time we come upon it, we breathe a sigh of relief. We're forever hoping to find, or at least to safely deduce, a designer. But instead, we repeatedly discover that natural processes, collisional selection of worlds, say, or natural selection of gene pools, or even the convection pattern in a pot of boiling water, can extract order out of chaos and deceive us into deducing purpose where there is none.
Ladies